I wanted to introduce you to my coworker Chen, a senior software developer who also manages the SolarWinds service desk for SolarWinds. So Chen, nice to have you here.
Hey, Sean. Thanks. Great to see you again. And thanks for introducing me. Hey, everyone. I'm Gretchen, and I'm a senior software engineer at SolarWinds. I'm also currently doing the admin work for our internal SolarWinds service desk.
Yeah, I've actually been working with Gretchen, Chen, since SolarWinds acquired the product 5 years ago. We were working very closely together to launch different processes and talk about different ways to leverage automation rules and the workflows. So we've actually been partnering quite a bit over the last several years to see the SolarWinds service desk implemented internally. It's been a lot of fun working with you.
Yeah, I remember when I started, I was introduced immediately to you because you are the expert in service desk at that time. So thanks for all the guidance with there, Sean. I really appreciate it. Years back, I remember when I started handling service desk, our heavy users are mostly IT departments, IT team. So there's help desk, request center, security team, and infrastructure and so on. So it's mostly heavily under IT.
Yeah. And even before some of our newer features, hint, where we're heading towards, even before some of those newer features, I think you had probably also helped some of the other departments or service providers work on implementing the SolarWinds service desk. And so we had a little bit of a different approach to it rather than having them use the same IT tenant. Sometimes they would adopt their own tenant and we would help them deploy it that way. Can you tell us a little bit about how that worked?
Yep, that's right. So again, when I started, it's in our internal service desk, and that's the one that's IT is using. But then I found out that there's also another instance where HR is using. So at first, it's very confusing because why are there two instances if there's just one service desk, if there's just one SolarWinds? So over time, there are teams aside from HR that are showing their interest in using service desk, just to where they can house their requests or where they can organize it. At first, okay, fine, there's legal that's coming in. So yeah, I can add legal team here and I can just add their own permission and restrictions. Because of course, for legal, what they want is they have their private tickets, and that's not going to be seen by other agents. So at first, that's fine. And then there comes different teams coming in, like marketing and parts of HR that's more handling on private tickets. And that's where it gets a bit tricky with the configuration and their roles.
So it kind of almost was natural and it made more sense to separate the tenants with their own sets of roles and permissions rather than having a ton of different roles and permissions all in one list for the one IT provider.
Yeah, and that's right. At that time, I realized, that's why HR have their own tenant because of this. It's getting a bit confusing for an admin myself and also for agents. Of course, they're not supposed to see the private data that's been worked on by HR or legal. So it made sense at that time.
So even with roles and permissions, it was still difficult to maintain a separation of data access. And so, again, they moved into their own tenant. And so now with the features that released, I'll say early of late last year, if that makes sense, ESM, Enterprise Service Management features. So with someone on here who's dealt with the trickiness of trying to manage multiple tenants or trying to manage multiple departments in a single tenant even, what is probably the best part about having the ESM feature set to you?
Oh, I can think of a lot, but I have my top three. First of all, the roles and permissions. We've already discussed that. It's really something challenging for me because I need to set up different conditions for each agent because we only have, before HR and legal came in our internal service desk, there's only one global agent rule. And now that they're in there and the rest of the agents don't need to see their legal, their private tickets, I need to separate that So that's all filtered in their different roles and permissions in Service Desk. So the best part for me, that's still top one, the roles and permissions, because with ESM, since it's just one instance, there's different service providers. So we have, let's just stick to our example of HR and legal. So we can set up HR instance or HR org and legal org in ESM, and they will have their separate roles and permission setting. So I don't need to have them configured to consider the role of a global agent from IT versus the global agent role from legal or from HR. So I can already set that privacy of their tickets just with the upgrading to ESM.
I'll agree. I think roles and permissions is probably one of the biggest, not just from managing it, but again, from the security standpoint, because while I may have Big Brother God rights in the org level of the ESM tenants, when I go into HR, I'm just a regular old requester on the portal asking for services.
Another thing, aside from the roles and permissions, is their SLAs. So that's another challenging part for me, because for SLAs, currently, what we have in Service Desk right now, we have a global SLA. So anything that I set up in there, it's going to be applied to all tickets, unless I scope it based on categories where this team or this group is working on, which I don't think is very reliable, because there's sometimes this category is going to be worked on by a different department, which the SLA, if ever I'm going to configure it on a specific category, won't be applied to that team. So with ESM, that is another problem solved for me, because I can now set up however they want their SLAs to be. So if they want an SLA to breach after 4 hours of not being resolved, I can do that. For HR, if it's going to be different, I can do that too.
To that point, you mentioned the category, and I think that's a huge thing that gets freed up. One of the asks that we had was a third level of category to kind of solve this, right? I want to start with saying it's HR and then have categories for HR and so forth. So this really solves for that, is because now I don't have to have a category called HR. All of the categories within the HR tenant are for HR. So it really does solve quite a few issues for that. Similarly, I would say is reporting and custom field creation. You can create dedicated things per service provider now, so it doesn't have to really get that big, monstrous, hairy list of custom fields, custom forms, categories, roles and permissions all in one spot where you have to, like you said, filter through just your configuration. It's now created in the individual service provider space, so it's so much cleaner and better organized and more secure in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We call it the Tier 3 categorization because we don't want it called as a custom field because it's not being used that way. So we call it Tier 3 categorization, where there is a category of HR and there's subcategory of, let's say, benefits. And then under benefits, there's another subcategory for that, which is set up currently under dynamic forms. And now with ESM, we don't need to do that anymore. So that's going to be more cleaner and organized.
Yeah. And I want to say most recently, one of the features that we saw, which is another big benefit as we kind of overcome some of the launch anticipation for this, is not every feature was there, but something that just came out that I'm excited to talk about and see that you have also used this, if I'm not mistaken, is passing the tickets between the service providers, right? So that was an essential thing that people wanted to see as part of this, is they still want to be able to share the work. And that's something that recently just was released as well.
Yes, that's actually our main ask to our product team for us to apply it live in our production, because it's important for us that collaboration is definitely still there. I mean, it's going to look like it's just one single tenant, but of course we want tickets to be passed around on different departments. Just a good example will be for onboarding, for example. So the primary ticket will be under IT, but there will be tickets in that onboarding primary ticket that should be passed to, let's say, facilities or HR. So at first, that wasn't possible. But with this new release, it is now feasible to pass tickets from different service providers, which is really great.
So landing on the portal now at an organization level means you don't see your classic buttons of where are the tickets, where are the requests. Instead, we can give them an opportunity to transition from here to the individual service providers, where I can see IT has their very own dedicated portal. Or going back, we can see that Human Resources has their very own dedicated portal. And on these portals, we're able to submit tickets specific to that service provider. The one thing I want to note here is on the Human Resources, I can go back to Platform. On the IT, I can go back to Platform. But if I go to the Legal, then we'll be able to see that I actually can't go back to Platform. And so just to give you an explanation, back to Platform means you are an administrator or at least an agent in that service provider. So this is where we're really starting to see the main difference between I'm an agent for IT, but not an agent for legal. And I'm also an admin or agent at the organization level. So some of the other things that we had talked about was the categorization. If I go into my IT, I'll go back to my platform view, and I'll see that I have my own list under Setup, Service Desk, and Categories. I have my own list of categories here. But if we went into our Human Resources tenant and did the same thing, they have their very own list of categories, their very own setup of custom forms and fields. And because this was something that was so near and dear to your heart, Chin, the roles and permissions as well. So we can have an administrator of the HR service provider, an agent, task user, and a requester. But we don't have to have all sorts of different roles for the other folks in there, right? An IT user is a requester in the human resource tenant, and a human resource user is a requester in the IT tenant. So it keeps that list of roles for each individual service provider cleaner, right? Since they have their own safe space, they can just be an agent. And just like that, HR and IT can be agents and masters of their own domain. One of the things that organizations will ask or struggle with is adoption. And so it's really cool sometimes, and it sounds like a lot of what you do is like being a solution engineer inside the business, right? Which is pretty cool. Because a lot of what I'll do is say, hey, look at how good this could be for you, right? And then they maybe like it, but then the adoption piece comes up. So have you, I guess rather not have you, what have you seen when you're talking to the business, or how are you showing the business other ways that these other service providers could leverage the tools?
It's actually easier to present Service Desk to them than our IT team, because it's just straightforward ticketing system. So they just want somewhere to house their requests. So for example, with the legal team and with our HR team, they're usually using just, Outlook and Teams, or just from the office, someone asking them directly for assistance. Those are their medium in getting the requests. So at the end of the day, there's no way for them to pull a report from it. Like, how are their managers gonna know how many tasks they've resolved if that's the only way that they're gonna get it? So with Service Desk, it's easy to present it to them. So what I do is, actually, you're right, I'm like a solutions engineer for them in a way, because I'm going to present it to them how easy it is to manage their requests using our platform. So they can easily pull reports, they can filter it, they can add some categories and some categories for them.
And this is a little bit of fishing here, but what kind of feedback have you seen from the departments using the tool?
Oh, it's all positive, honestly. It's great. And again, the requests are very simple. So it's just great to see positive feedback from it because, again, from before when I started in service desk, there's just mainly IT. And now we have different teams, different departments using service desk, which means they're loving the features. They're loving how it's working. And they do have some feature requests that are eventually are being added in our platform. So thanks to our product team for that. But so far, it's all positive feedbacks because, comparing it to getting requests from Teams or from Outlook, like searching in your email, what's the last request that you got, it's still way better to have your own ticketing system, your own ticketing tool.
I couldn't agree more. And it's funny how a tool intended for communication accidentally transformed into somehow we're using it to track our work, and that being email.
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
It's like, oh man, what an eye-opener that those who kind of invented service management IT have tools that we can use as service providers, right? It could be legal or HR. And now we can manage our services this way too. And guess what? The method of submission could still just be email, like you said, keeping it very simple. But now you have the ability to track, measure, report, right? In a system, whereas previously it was all just messages coming in. So this has been a great topic. And it's super cool for us to be able to say, hey, we're SolarWinds, and we're using these awesome enterprise service management features ourselves too.
Yep, that's right. And one positive feedback that I want to share is that SolarWinds Service Desk is user-friendly. That's what I've always been hearing. It's user-friendly. It's easy for them to warm up, to get used to play around with it, and to eventually introduce it to their team members to use.
What a fun and exciting opportunity to discuss using some of the features with someone internal to SolarWinds. But let's not just keep it all about SolarWinds here. Let's talk about someone out in our Thwack community. Next, we're going to be talking with one of our Thwack MVPs, Jeremy. I'm joined now by Jeremy Mayfield, who is a customer of ours and longtime fan. So, Jeremy, welcome. It's good to have you on.
It's nice to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about your story and journey with SolarWinds?
Absolutely. So I've been with or using SolarWinds products since 2004. I was introduced to the engineering tool set way back when, and then became a big fan, and then was able to jump up to the Orion suites of tools. I had then received my first invite to join a young community that was growing way back in, I believe it was like the 2011, 2012 timeframe. I was invited to become a member of Thwack, and I was a Thwack MVP for nearly a decade, where I spent a lot of time attending, SWUG events and meeting different individuals working at SolarWinds. I've even been to the main SolarWinds office and attended a Thwack camp live in person. So I think I was the last class that got to attend live in person. So that was pretty great. I'm currently operating as the director of IT for National Sugar Marketing here in beautiful Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. And we moved from a on-premise organization out to a fully cloud organization. And so in doing so, I needed a solution that could fit my need. And that's where I turned back to SolarWinds, having been a customer for many, many years. When I transitioned to this role, I looked and I needed an opportunity to leverage a service management platform. I knew SolarWinds had a great one. And that's how I ended up here talking to you today.
That's awesome to hear. And I think it's cool for a couple of reasons. One, obviously we're here to talk about the community in large. And I had actually just interacted with you before we are meeting now, as you had posted something on the Thwack forum post for SolarWinds Service Desk. And it was funny, I saw your picture on Thwack, and then I saw your picture in my email talking about our session. And so I was like, wow, what are the odds? So it's really cool just to think about how the community is just such a big part of things, right? Even just regular day-to-day operations for us. So, and then the other thing is, when you were talking about your story, you were talking about the portfolio and what you leverage from the infrastructure tools. And then now coming back, over a decade later, we're talking about the service desk, which historically hadn't been part of the SolarWinds portfolio. So I just think it's really neat there. And so I'm really excited to talk about the service desk and kind of how you're using it, since you're coming at things from a different angle than previously having been on the engineering side. So with that, tell me a little bit about your introduction to this role. And, I'm very glad we've got a loyal fan of SolarWinds and you came to get to the service desk, but why the service desk, right? What made you say, okay, let's look at that tool as something we can implement?
Well, I think that the tool itself, one, it met our requirement for SaaS-based platform, right? That was the first checkbox. We needed something that was going to fit in our current infrastructure or tech stack, and it ticked the box. Second was its ability to handle the IT platform, right? So coming into this organization, I received information from the leadership, which is why I took the role, how they were excited to present a greenfield approach to IT, where they're saying, hey, come in, build it, we will use it, kind of thing. And so I knew we needed to leverage a good service platform. Even though we're a smaller company, what we do, where we're positioned in our space, we work with a lot of large organizations and therefore need a really good service platform to ensure that we can do our jobs efficiently. Enter SolarWinds again. So another tick box, right? They have a very good platform that can help. But then there were a lot of other areas where we had some deficiencies. And I saw through the SWAC community, as well as research that I had done, how the product could be leveraged and how more and more people were leveraging these, traditional IT-based platforms for business-related items. And that's what really had me excited, because the SolarWinds platform tends to be a little more robust than what you might find with other tools that are out there on the open market, right? Whether you're talking open source or whether you're talking some very expensive tools. And, you can definitely pay as much money as you want and probably pay for the solution that might fit your business. But I find that SolarWinds, hands down, just simply covers the full gamut of what I need and what my organization needs. And so it was just the right fit, the right price, the right size. And, and that's what led me to overall selecting SolarWinds over some of the other competition in the open market.
So Jeremy, that's a great way to kind of segue into what other I wanted to talk about. And I mentioned this at the top of our session, that we bumped into each other on Thwack by complete chance. You had posted a question. And so reducing some of the complexity, you are still working out some of the kinks and how you want it to perform. Let's see if we can just dive into that and see what's going on here. But just to kind of surface for the folks listening, we're talking about a use case where it is, again, beyond IT, if I'm not mistaken. This is trying to take an element of the service management we've been talking about and put it towards customer facing, right? And so the question really kind of came around routing, because it is something that you can configure yourself, but maybe we don't know where the buttons are. So Jeremy, based off of the responses, have you made any headway? Do you still have questions about it? Is it working the way you want, or maybe we can kind of just chat it out?
Sure. So let me just first start by saying what that use case was. We're in a unique business here, as I kind of mentioned, in our position here as an organization, and we receive about 90% of our orders through email. We had roughly 65 to 70,000 orders processed last year, of which 10% of those were EDI. The rest were all emailed into our customer service department. We have a customer base that is pretty consistent. We distribute sugar. That's what we do. And, we have fantastic customers. During this email process, though, what we'd like to do is assign specific reps to specific customers so that they have consistency through their order process. They have those, I like to use the term that single throat to choke, right? When it goes back to, who's responsible, who's accountable. And therefore we need a process that allows us to manage that. Straight email just doesn't do it. We allow all of our customers to email into a single email address, and based on the domain, we need to route it to not only their primary, but a secondary, and then also the manager of the department. The reason for the secondary is in case somebody ever wants to take PTO. I know that's, amazing that people actually want to take time off, but sometimes they do, and we want to make sure they can. So, and then the manager is there to ensure nothing falls through the cracks, kind of an oversight. So we need almost like extra groups or extra assignments. And then we need that follow-up and all that those back and forth transactions with the customers, because just because we process 65, 70,000 orders, we may have 4 emails, 10 emails per one order email, depending on what that is. So we need all that data captured, all of it tracked, and plotted so we understand, changes that are happening with the order, with the customer, et cetera. So it's very important. My issue was on that routing specifically, is the best way to go about getting a domain to route to who I want it to, when I want it to, how I want it to. And that's really where the question came from. Have I been able to move forward with it? The answer is no, not quite yet. So I'm mapping it out. There's been a couple of small changes that I may go through, and I was reading a little bit more about the ESM today, and looking at the different options there, and really trying to make sure that I'm doing it correctly, because what I don't want to do is have to go back and redo a bunch of work. However, I feel like with your help and the help of the THWAC community, I'll be very successful in getting things configured exactly the way I want it.
You're not the first person to have that exact use case and scenario, and you're also not the first person I've heard to say the single throat to choke. It is a good thing to have, right? You don't want to have 15 contacts to have to roll through to find your answer. So one of the first things I want to say is, yeah, absolutely, the product can do it. You mentioned another cool use case, and again, this is one of my favorite things about service management is use cases, about time off. A feature you may not have known exists in the service desk is you can set up out-of-office and delegates. So you could build in some automatic routings to include that as well, those people, or it could stay with the expected default assignee, and then should that default assignee go out, they have an out-of-office that they can enable there as well. But let's do a quick demonstration. Leveraging the automation rules would be your bread and butter for doing that. And yes, you can do it by domain. You can do some additional layers just for notification purposes to make sure the right folks are being notified, attaching CCs automatically so that the right people are copied, even if they want to say, okay, I'll sweep this into a junk folder until I know the employee's out, or, and the other big piece that you mentioned, and this is where I was saying that IT really put the true capstone on what is service management, is that audit trail, right? Sometimes one engagement, I'll call it an engagement because that's more of a kind of global or universal term for it. But in this case, it's orders, right? But one engagement, I'll stick with that, may have several different back and forths that you need to manage. I'm now realizing engagement's not the best term because there's many engagements, but about the same issue topic. So having that audit trail, or even potentially somehow it slips out and goes into its own second thread, but it's still about the same thing, being able to merge them back together and then have the records linked so you can really see the history of what's going on with this specific order for this specific customer. And one more thing, you also mentioned ESM as our feature set. I think that could be something that's fantastic to look into. You'd be able to do a little bit more customer-facing branding, giving those folks that are responding to the customers their own dedicated space to eventually maybe even have a portal that those customers go to engage with, right? So taking it maybe somewhere to the next level. So giving them their own space there where you can still do the exact same types of configuration. What are your thoughts on that? Because you already mentioned it, so I'd imagine you're planning.
Yeah, so you're dead on, right? I would love to be able to get it to the point where we could offer a portal to our customers to be able to communicate that way. Maybe even go as far as, if it's available, having a one-on-one chat with the agent on the other side, their customer service rep. I would love to see that level of communication to bring that efficiency forward. I'd love to be able to provide that back to the customer and give them the ability, even, looking at the potential of integrating down the road with ERP and being able to push information through there as well. So there's a lot going through my head right now. And I do feel that, the SolarWinds platform has the capabilities to do all of these things. But as I said, I'm moving a little slower because I want to make sure I get it right. But to your point about the out of office, that's actually a very key element, because when we do close for holidays or people are out, we currently, have to send emails out that say, hey, we're out of office, and having that be automated is just one less thing, right? Every time we, whether it's IT helping, enabling, or whether it's a system like SolarWinds that's enabling, being able to knock off that one more thing that our end users or our organization doesn't have to do is a win. It's efficiency. It's money saved. It's time saved. And time is the one thing we all need more of. It can't get any more of it back once we use it. So I really feel like that's really where the biggest gains come from. So we're real excited to see where this goes in the future.
Man, spot on, Jeremy, for exactly what we're talking about today, decomplexifying, and love that it comes from our community, which is, again, my favorite place to engage with our customers. So what a unique way that we're having this session, in that we stumbled across each other moments before meeting for our session in a way. So thank you again for joining us in this SWAC session, Jeremy.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to catching up with you on THWAC.